Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Ball. Let me tell you, if you want an incredible video for your next project, visit barnescreativestudios.com. Well, today we're talking about construction. You know, a lot of people have been concerned about construction prices, labor, everything involved with construction and how it's going to impact the business world, how it's going to impact commercial real estate. Well, have an expert on the phone with us. Please welcome Stuart Binstock. He's president and CEO of Construction Financial Management Association. Stuart, thanks for being with us.
How are you today, Michael? Thank you.
I'm doing well, thanks you. And so the storms, all the flooding in Houston and Florida, Puerto Rico, is this impacting the construction industry? What are you seeing?
Oh, very, very much so, Michael. They say, I believe between the Florida and Houston, and this doesn't even include Puerto Rico, the damage is about between $150 to $200 billion, which is 25% more than the damage caused by Katrina, and we all know how much damage Katrina caused. So you've got just a ton of issues. Coordinating local, state, and federal funding is going to be a major issue. Then that's all exacerbated by the labor worker shortage that we have in the industry. I'll probably touch on that later in this interview, but even CBS Sunday Morning did a segment this couple days ago on the worker shortage. So it's even hit mainstream media that they recognize that this is a huge issue in the construction industry. Maybe on the positive side, but I don't know. I'm not sure if this is a positive. Both Florida and Texas have seemed to roll back some of their regulations and licensing to get work done. On the one hand, maybe that things will get done quicker, but on the other hand, you might have some unscrupulous contractors, and who maybe are not licensed and might end up doing some work because both states have decided to loosen up their requirements. So there's some huge issues. And then, if you're a contractor, you're going to go to an owner and try and invoke the force majeure clause. I don't get to use that expression very often, but that's a nice. I believe it's Latin, Michael, which basically says, when there's been an act of God, an unforeseen natural disaster, that you can adjust your contract, and you can bet that contractors in both those states that have had projects ongoing have been severely limited and severely delayed, and they're going to try and invoke that clause, as they should, to ask for an extension of time. So you're going to get into some difficult issues, and I'm just talking about construction that was progressing before this disaster.
Right, and you mentioned there was a shortage of construction people, and that was before the storms. So obviously we're going to have not enough labor now. So how is that impacting prices so far, and what do you expect for construction prices moving forward?
Well, I think they're going in one direction, Michael. They're going to go up.
Yeah.
I mean, material. Let's take aside the labor shortage for a second. Let's talk about material prices. Depending on, I think a lot of this will depend on the speed at which activity takes place at both these states. If there's some major activity in both states and they're trying to do things quickly, then that's going to impact material prices even more so. If they kind of try and do it over time and kind of a steady progression, then maybe material prices won't be affected as much, but I don't think there's any way you can look at material prices and think there's only one way they're going to go, and that's up. And then as for the labor shortage, obviously the labor shortage puts pressure on wages. Once again, the only place they can go is up. We do a quarterly questionnaire of our members. It's called Confindex. And we ask them about a series of things, series of issues, and series of problems. When we ask them about the worker shortage, they say it is it is the biggest issue in the industry by about 5 times. They'll talk about public policy. They'll be concerned about some public policy issues. They may be concerned about financing. But when you want to talk about labor shortages, it's 5 times as significant as any other single issue. It is the biggest issue facing the industry. It has been the biggest issue facing the industry, and it will continue to be so, even more so after these 2 terrible incidents and plus what's happened in Puerto Rico.
Well, if I'm looking at my construction costs and my labor costs moving forward, what range might I expect my increases, my construction cost increases?
Oh, gosh, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to give you an answer to that question in terms of the range of cost. But I'm going to tell you there's only one place they're going, and that's up.
Yeah. Okay. And what are the key industry financial indicators? What are the trends there? What do you expect?
So they've been, prior to the hurricane season, things were actually very positive in the industry. Our members tell us there's a lot of work out there. Our survey that we do quarterly, I mentioned before, says that profit margins are up. Financing seems to be available. The only little question mark is there is some uncertainty as to the future and as to public policy. And I think that has a lot to do with what the current administration in Washington talked about regarding construction and how little has actually taken place regarding construction since they came into power. And then add to that one of the kind of hallmarks of this administration was they were talking about public-private partnerships as a way of funding public work, and recently they seem to have backed off on that as well. So I think there is a great deal of concern about where this administration is heading in terms of construction.
We're talking with Stuart Binstock, and he's CEO of CFMA, Construction Financial Management Association. So, Stuart, if we are going to be doing some construction, some build out of some office space, some new construction of buildings, what are some tips as you look at this industry for a long time, you're seeing what's going on with labor and construction costs. What are some tips for folks moving forward?
Well, I think one thing I'd like to just briefly mention, and I want to be very clear about this. My organization, CFMA, doesn't take a position on this, but I think it's something that we've seen over time, and that's if you're procuring construction services, you might want to take a look at the difference between low bid versus what people commonly call best value procurement. So, traditionally, owners have asked for contractors to bid on work based on a set of plans and specifications and a design, and then they ask them for the low bid, and low bid wins. When you're looking at a period of time now where there are going to be shortages, I think you want to make sure you have the best contractor possible available, and you can do that through what we call best value procurement. So you look at factors other than price. Price is obviously a very important consideration, but there's a lot of other things you can look at from a contractor. You can look at their past record. You can look at projects they've done in the past. You can see if they've completed them on time, within budget. So there are a lot of factors to look at to think about procuring construction services differently than just low bid, particularly in a period of time now when there's going to be some wage pressure. And so people could come in at a low bid, win the job, and then you find out that they can't perform the job, and that creates a whole bunch of havoc for an owner.
Yeah. Well, Stuart, that sounds like inside information. So how would I find out if the previous jobs this contractor's been on were on time and on budget?
Well, I think it's a matter of when you go through that process of procurement, you can ask those questions, and you can ask for that kind of information from a contractor. That could be part of the request for information and request for proposals as you're looking for construction services.
Okay. And then you guys are very active in the commercial industry and construction industry. Are there any other concerns for the practitioners out there in the space that to think about?
Well, I mentioned worker shortages. I want to just touch on that for a second again. And there are worker shortages both at the labor level. So you're talking about plumbers, electricians, sheet metal workers. There's shortages there. But there are also shortages, for good project managers. So we just don't have enough people going through the pipeline. And, contractors are trying everything possible to find people, and they'll pay a premium for, really good people. One thing I've noticed recently, I've seen publicized, is contractors are providing internships for kids in college, maybe in a construction management program. They bring them in, and they kind of let them experience during the summer all that a contractor does. I think that's a great idea. But the larger issue is there are not enough people in the construction management programs, and there are not enough people becoming journeyman electricians, journeyman plumbers. And, my personal view is, once again, this is not CFMA's view, but it's my view, that we need to do something as an industry in total. And it's hard sometimes to get union and non-union contractors to talk about this collectively. There's a lot of activity going on, a lot of promotion of the industry, but it's all kind of piecemeal. I think we need a huge public relations campaign because the reality is a construction job as a plumber or as an electrician is a very well-paying job.
Yes. And
you get trained to do that without incurring any debt. You go through a program, and you actually, are an apprentice. You get paid while you're learning to do a job, and you incur no debt. There are a lot of things to say on behalf of the industry as a future employment opportunity. The problem is it's a branding and it's a perception by parents, by kids, that this is an industry not to get involved in. But that's just not the case. There are lots of opportunities in the industry.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And a lot of people in the construction industry, and they do extremely well. They're very respected, and when someone does a good job, they make great money. It is a good field to get into. And I know you're busy. Before you go, I want to ask you, if you were talking to a governmental agency, if the president's listed in Congress, what tips would you have related to construction, maybe immigration, things that might help the economy in the construction industry?
Well, I think in terms of construction, I'd focus on helping us with the worker shortage. I think there are programs that the government could help with that can be agnostic, whether it's union or non-union, in terms of promoting the industry and promoting apprenticeship programs, promoting training. That's what we need, and we need some help from people to encourage others to recognize the value of the industry. The other thing, in terms of immigration, the reality is that there is a fairly large part of the employment segment, particularly when it comes to some on the labor, side, that are illegal immigrants. And you can't talk about this gigantic program on the one hand and also start deporting people and sending them off out of the country. There seems to be a little inconsistency between the two there, and I think some further thought needs to be taken to figure out a cohesive, coherent program that can accomplish what this administration wants to do in terms of immigration without harming the industry.
Yeah. Well, those are good tips and good points. Stuart, thanks for joining us on the show today. Great information.
Thank you, Michael.
If you'd like more information from Stuart, visit their website at cfma.org. And thanks for joining us today. If you have any comments, please share them, subscribe below, and thanks for being with us. And until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh, and join us for America's Commercial Real Estate Show.